Build a gaming PC in 2021 without breaking the bank or limiting your gaming experience. It's possible, especially with the system we are building and benchmarking in this video, putting this configuration up against some of today's most popular and most demanding games like the latest season in Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, and yes, of course, Cyberpunk 2077. Let's jump into it. But if this is your first time to the channel and you want to learn more about building PCs and other gaming related stuff, click the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss a thing. What's happening, YouTube and the internet? Terrence here, and we are back inside the lab and taking a look at that new price to performance on AMD's AM4 socket, more specifically the B450 chipset. And while the market may be in rare form due to limited stock on new hardware, and this is largely in part due to scalpers picking them off before most consumers are able to, but you can find value or that new price to performance with a modest budget similar to the system we are building here today, which does hover around the higher end side in terms of cost, with all of the parts coming in at a total of around 800 USD. This could be the new norm, or at least until middle-end hardware comes back into stock like the RTX 3060 Ti and Zen 3 CPUs. And so what kind of performance can you expect at this price point going forward into the new year? Well, for starters, let's quickly go over the parts we'll be using for this system to answer that exact question. Starting with the 6-core, 12-thread Ryzen 5 2600X, with its max boost clock of up to 4.2 GHz, strong IPC and multi-thread performance at its $199 price point. It's no 3600 or 5600X, but it is a little easier to find versus the other two, and depending on where you live, you may be able to find it for a little bit less than this price. And then for our motherboard, I went with the 400 series chipset, more specifically the ASRock B450 Steel Legend, which is coming in at $94. It's a little on the lower end side, but it does come with features you want on your motherboard like M.2 support, USB 3.2, and this motherboard supports Ryzen 3000 and 5000 series CPUs. And for video, we're going with NVIDIA's Gigabyte 1660 Ti, which has 6 GB of GDDR6 memory, 1500 plus CUDA cores, and is generally a slightly faster GTX 1660 for $279 MSRP, but they are going for a little over $309 on average, or a little bit higher. You won't get ray tracing or DLSS support, but you will get the benefits of a better encoder on the Turin architecture and one of the better, more available options at this $300 to $400 price point. And for system memory, we're going with Team Group's T-Force Falcon Z 16 GB kit of dual channel DDR4 at 3200 MHz for a cool $60. We are going to enable the XNP for this memory kit, so more on that later. And for storage, a single 1TB Crucial MX500 SSD for $94, which is going to give us fast boot and load times, an 80 plus bronze certified Corsair CV series 550 watt PSU that comes in at 60 USD and will be more than enough for this system. And then to hold it all together, we're going with the steel plastic hybrid Micro ATX Cooler Master Masterbox MBL 311L for an affordable price of around $60 US, bringing this system to a grand total of just a hair under 800 USD. And now those are all of the parts that we are working with today, all of which were bought off of Amazon, links down in the description box below. And so, how does all of this translate in terms of performance? Let's get these parts unboxed, build us a gaming PC, and find out. All right, we're in the BIOS, and taking a look, we see our CPU, the 2600X, the XMP settings, which I went ahead and loaded the 3200 megahertz profile, and pretty much all of our components are registering as they should. CPU temps look fine, and as you can see here, our storage drive, the 500 gigabyte Crucial SSD, and of course our video card, which is working because it's giving off or giving out a signal. And now it's here where I like to install Windows using a regular USB drive and a legit Windows 10 key. And once that's all good to go and Windows is finished taking over the storage drive, I immediately go in and install any and all relevant updates along with my suite of benchmarking tools. But since everything is looking good, we're going to go ahead and let Windows finish updating and then build in the case and of course, play some games. 1080p, or 1440p. This configuration will net you an affordable, high-quality gaming experience with the 1660 Ti and the Ryzen 2600X, putting out solid FPS as you can see here in Fortnite, which averaged over 144 FPS at 1080p competitive settings and over 100 FPS with decent minimum and 1% lows, and at 1440p medium and high settings it also put out a solid output. And Call of Duty Warzone at 1080p competitive settings put up over 100 FPS in both average and minimum FPS, but wasn't as impressive at high settings, although averaged around or over 60 FPS in all three metrics, which was the same for 1440p at normal/medium settings. And GTA 5, which an older but very much still popular game these days, put up respectable FPS at 1080p, bringing in over 100 FPS at very high settings with solid minimum and 1% lows, and the same could be said for 1440p but at high normal settings. With GTA 5 having so many options to mess around with or to play around with in the settings, you could discover that balance between gameplay and graphics that suits your playstyle or at least matches and complements your monitor's refresh rate. This is something we talked about during one of our live streams, which if you're new around here to the channel, I do welcome you to subscribe because we go live every Saturday around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find a link to the replays down in the description box below. And while it is in a weird place, I went ahead and threw Cyberpunk 2077 to the mix on the 1.05 hotfix patch, and surprisingly at 1080p it was playable at moderate frame rates, bringing in just a hair over 60 FPS at medium settings, but with much to be had in the minimum and 1% lows, and the same was evident at 1440p, albeit low settings. And now temperatures were a little higher than what I'm personally used to seeing, but I do normally test on open air setups and with systems that have AIOs. But the 2600X spiked at around 74C during gaming, which may seem high, but coupled with the fact that we're testing under the high performance plan and Windows, and the area we test in does get warm as it's winter here, we're also using the 65-watt stock cooler that comes with the 2600X, the Wraith Spire. But the numbers were in line with a Cinebench R15 run, which saw the CPU hit a max temperature of 81 degrees C during the test, which is perfectly fine for general usage, especially if you don't plan on overclocking, something I don't recommend you doing on this cooler anyway. PBO by default will dynamically change the CPU frequency as it pushes the system power beyond its rated specifications. This allows PBO to act more aggressively, thus translating to more performance. But temps were within spec of pretty much all Ryzen CPUs and perfectly fine for gaming, but if you were looking to make a future upgrade, I'd start here and replace the stock cooler with the $60 Cooler Master Master Liquid ML 120 RGB V2, or keep it passive and rock the Hyper 212 Black Edition for a cool $40. You benefit from lower temps, especially with going with an AIO, right? Because water transfers heat more efficiently than air, but you would also get a quieter system and higher boost clocks. This would also make future overclocking a possibility should you want to dabble in either Ryzen Master or the BIOS, which I recommend going with the latter versus the former, which I also recommend you subscribing because we do a lot of that around here. And then the GPU, our 1660 Ti, reached a max temperature of 71 degrees C while gaming, and that was all on stock settings and with the side glass panel on, which means the airflow in the Masterbox 311L is okay. It could be better, but it is a decent case at the $60 price point. It comes with ARGB fans in the front for intake through the mesh, and I added a single 120mm fan in the rear for exhaust, which I ended up switching off camera for a single EK Varder Evo 120mm spinner to improve heat dispersion. There's also a small ARGB controller that comes with the Masterbox 311L. It allows you to take full control of the addressable RGB LEDs in your system, allowing you to create a comprehensive lighting system within your case. One downside to this is that you may have to take the rear panel off every time you want to change the disco show, but it is possible to connect any 2-pin button to the controller to allow you to switch between presets without opening the system. Cooler Master allows you to connect the controller with the reset button to use it as an external ARGB preset switch. But then you have to ask yourself, is it really worth losing the ability to perform a quick reset on your system Ultimately, this may or may not be an inconvenience to you, but either option is definitely a suitable one. It just really could come down to preference. And now with the build cost of a little over 800 USD and an extensive upgrade path on the AM4 socket, you'll be able to play some of today's most popular and demanding games on both a casual and competitive level at an influx of different graphics settings, all on a modern platform that's going to get it done now and going forward in the future. And for more awesome PC gaming content, watch the top playlist first and the bottom one next. Join our community by tapping the round subscribe icon down below. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go. Thanks for giving this one a watch. I hope to catch you on the next one. So until then, be easy.